Hi, parents and families. My name is Miss Fields. I teach kindergarten and grade 1. Today, I'm talking to you about the ways that I've taught students to cool down. We all have negative emotions. We are all human. And the thing that I've taught students is first, it is perfectly acceptable to be upset or frustrated or angry. We're all human. But secondly, it is unacceptable to be mean or rude or disruptive to others or the community because of your negative emotion. So they are allowed to feel what they're feeling, but they must manage that in a way that is kind and safe to others. So, there are a couple of things that I want to go over first before we go over the ways that I've taught students to cool down. The first is simply telling a child to calm down without teaching them the resources to do so or the techniques to do so is not fair. They're young, they don't naturally come with coping mechanisms, so we as adults have to teach them those effective ways to manage their emotions. So if a child has not been taught how to cool down and they have not had adults who've helped them to figure out how they cool down best, saying calm down is simply not fair. Also, you want to make sure that you are not adding emotion or escalating the situation. For example, if your child is really upset and you're telling them, "Why are you acting like this?" They have their own negative emotion and your negative emotion now, and that's only making the situation bigger. Also, if you are overly sympathetic in the situation, saying, "Oh, it seems like you're so upset. Oh, that makes me so sad to see." That is also feeding into the situation and adding more emotion to it that simply doesn't need to be there. So the best thing to do is to remain calm and neutral. You can, let's say if your child is getting upset and you think it could go either way, like you don't think that they must cool down, you can say, "It seems like you're getting upset. Would you like to cool down?" And that's giving them the option. Maybe they can push through and they'll be fine. Or maybe they will say, "Yes, I'd like to cool down." If your child is starting to exhibit behavior that's unacceptable, behavior that they know or that you feel is not the right way to act or to treat others, then you can tell them, "We need to cool down. How would you like to do so?" Or you can tell them, "We need to cool down. I'm going to leave you to do so." And that is letting them know they need to cool down. They need to take the way that they're acting or their emotions down, but you're also still giving them the choice in how they do so and the time and space to do so. When your child is cooling down, it's important that they're kind of left alone. So you want to let other people know they're cooling down. Let's do something else. They'll join us when they're ready. Or let's say if it's just you and the child, you can ask them, do you want me to stay with you or do you want to be by yourself? If they want to be by themselves, go ahead and see if you can go to another room or a place where you can still keep an eye on them, but you're not watching them as they cool down. You're letting them kind of have a little bit of time to themselves, a little bit of privacy so they can cool down and feel like they're not, on a timetable. They're not on a countdown to when they must cool down, because that sort of tension, that pressure can also then escalate their emotions. If they do want you to stay with them, if they're a smaller child, you can offer to hold their hand if that's something that you know is comforting for them. But you want to kind of turn your body away from them or sit side by side with them. So again, you're not looking right at them. You're sort of doing your own thing as they are cooling down. And that's teaching them that they need to manage their emotions on their own, even though you're with them to support them. Also, if your child is acting this way to get attention, it takes the attention off. You're not feeding into it. And so if that is the root cause, it's not going to escalate it, or it's not going to encourage that behavior in the future. So I think we've done a good job covering sort of the background and the why. So now let's get into the how. So the first technique that students can use to cool down is simply to be alone. And the way that I taught this to students is, if you know that your emotion is going to make it difficult for you to speak to others kindly, to treat others kindly, to respect property, then you need to ask to be alone. You may not be around others and mistreat them. If you are in a place where you cannot treat others well, you need to walk away and come back when you can be kind and respectful. So there's no excuse for disrespectful behavior. The next is students can color or draw quietly. A lot of times that's relaxing for them, especially if they're coloring. It's repetitive and it's also creative, fun. So you can have coloring supplies out and they can just take the things that they would like to use. They can also close their eyes and imagine good things. So I actually have students that will sit like this and they just go into their own world. If you think that this would be a good technique for your child, you can also sort of talk to them in advance when they're calm, when there's no situation to cool down, and you can talk to them about the things that they enjoy. And then when they need to cool down and you think that the best way, or you just want to suggest that they can close their eyes and imagine good things, you can remind them of those things and then give them the space to imagine whatever they want. Along with this, I've taught students a meditation technique. It's the balloon technique, and I'll link it in the description below. But the students basically imagine a balloon in the sky, imagine themselves bringing the balloon down to earth, and then letting it go. And this is something that we've actually practiced. So the students know what the balloon technique is. Also, a side note is that the students and I in class have actually practiced their favorite cool down techniques. And that's important as well, because when a student has high emotions, they need to have something that feels natural and automatic. If it doesn't feel natural and automatic, it's not going to be effective for them to cool down. They can also take deep breaths. So this can be simply on their own, taking deep breaths. I found that it's hard for students to take deep breaths on their own. So I've taught them 2 breathing techniques. The first is an elephant breath. So they breathe in, they breathe out. They breathe in, they breathe out. So first, this is silly. It gets them breathing more slowly, also just sort of making the buzzing sound. It's a distraction. And then the other technique is a circle breath. And this is where they're making a figure 8 or a sideways 8 in the air. So they go in, and it's very fluid, it's very relaxing. And again, it's something for them to do so they can just focus on doing that instead of focusing on the negative emotion. They can also stretch or exercise. That can be jogging in place. That can be just doing basic stretching. They can also do wall push-ups where they're standing there pushing against the wall. That can be really helpful because it's engaging their body in a different way. So again, it kind of takes the emphasis off of what's going on in their brain and it channels that to something else. And because they are using their muscles, it's just sort of creating stimulus that way and taking it off of their negative emotions. They can also do something called twisties. So this is to activate both sides of their brain, and doing twisties helps them to calm down because again, it's just taking the brain power. It's taking the brain power off of the emotion and putting it onto something else. So to do a twisty, I recommend that they stand, but if they're in the car or seated, they can still do this. So they just put their arms up and they twist left and right. It's important that they go all the way across their body, and that is going to activate both sides of their brain. They can also count. So most students can count to 20 or 100. So whatever they can count to, just have them count and then start back at 1 when they're done. And that is, again, it's meditative. It's just something that they can do that will take their mind off of the negative emotion. So we have be alone, color or draw quietly, close their eyes and imagine good things, the balloon meditation technique, taking deep breaths, elephant breaths or circle breaths, stretch or exercise, twisties, counting. Also, we don't do this at school because students cannot have gum, but giving them gum or having them chew something crunchy helps because there's a nerve that when stimulated through chewing, it then again takes the focus off of the negative emotion in their brain, and it sort of directs it to just the chewing, and it sort of helps them cool down. So those are the techniques that we use in class. It is an expectation. Students are allowed to feel what they feel, but they may not disrespect others, me, the school property, because of what they're feeling. And I do hope that if these techniques work for you and your family, that you will use them at home. If you have any questions, any thing that you would like me to consider, any comments, please do contact me, and thank you for your time. Bye-bye.